So we looked at it and said, what if you deconstructed that giant place and you build it to scale for the market that you're in? So if the market won't support, 285 rooms, will it support 20 or 10? And, can you build something that's of a luxury quality and standard and all those guest touch points that are close to or exactly on point with a Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton type experience? My thinking is we can. And technology is helping us do that as well.
Welcome to STR Unlocked, a podcast for driven vacation rental investors looking to gain the freedom that comes with an abundance of time and money.
I'm April.
And I'm Nathan.
Our life is busy with 3 small children, full-time jobs, and not nearly enough coffee. And we're unlocking success with short-term rental investing every single day. Join us in our journey as we learn and grow together.
If we can do it, so can you.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of STR Unlocked. I am so glad that you're here because I'm excited to share this conversation that we're about to have today. I'm first off here with my beautiful wife, April. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing great. And I also want to introduce you guys to an incredible entrepreneur who's doing some really amazing things. And I'm really excited for this conversation. Brice Bay. How you doing, Brice?
I'm doing great.
Good, man.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Well, I appreciate you being here. Guys, I just want to say before we get started, I reached out and you said, yes, of course, I want to come and I want to talk. And in the short conversation that I had with you on the phone, you have so many great ideas. You've got a lot of things ahead of you that you're excited about, that I'm excited for you about, and particularly here in our local area. So first off, before we get started talking about any of that stuff, tell us who is Brice Bay and how we get to this point.
Yeah, so Brice Bay, I've been in Greenville for 20 some years and raised children here and started several companies here and love the upstate and everything it has to offer. So I'm the biggest fan of it. I've spent most of my professional life in the marketing and technology space with a heavy emphasis on luxury hotel marketing. So we work for some of the largest brands in the world. That includes Fairmont Hotels and Resorts, Sofitel, Radisson, Ritz-Carlton, Swiss Hotels, and many other of the large global luxury brands. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth in the marketing space and learned a lot about social media and content marketing and all of those things. Which has sort of led me down a path to eventually having our own property. And so that's where we came up with the idea for our brand. And we've just launched our first property and opened it in Travelers Rest. So it's sort of been a long dream and long journey. And I'm now kind of both feet in full time in this business.
That is amazing. That's awesome. And it's obvious that all the cutting of the teeth that you did in your previous experience and your previous work experience with luxury brands and luxury hotels, it's brought a lot of knowledge into what you're doing now with the short-term rentals that you've built. You've got a lot of really special things going on. And I say this because, yeah, well, no, it is. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. Most short-term rental owners, I would say most short-term rental owners are in the business of basically acquiring a home, acquiring a house, and then flipping it into a short-term rental and putting it up on Airbnb, all the OTAs, and then running that investment as a short-term rental. You're taking a very different approach, and you're actually. I want to talk about the station. It's in Travelers Rest, which is right outside of Greenville, South Carolina, only about 10 minutes outside of Greenville, South Carolina. And instead of going and acquiring a property, doing a rehab on a property, or maybe just acquiring and throwing it up on Airbnb, you've actually built your own boutique hotel, right? And so I really want to dive into the station. I want to dive into TR. I want to dive into the process, how that happened, because I think there's a lot of investors out there who is very interested in this idea. And I first want to start off by saying, get your thoughts on this. Travelers Rest, South Carolina, even though it's a growing place, it's not a vacation rental destination, right? Like it's not our destination market. It's not a Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or even like upcoming like Blue Ridge, Georgia, or any place on the coast. It's not a place that people traditionally think of as a short-term rental space, and yet you decided to invest and build in Travelers Rest. So kind of explain to me why. What's the thought process?
Yeah. So I'll come back to YTR. But I want to start with sort of what we were looking for in terms of just the recipe.
Absolutely.
So we were looking for a place to build a destination. So, contrary to your comments, not that I don't that I disagree.
Sure.
TR is not a huge destination. It's not super well known, but it's got some of the ingredients, at least from our perspective, to become a destination.
100%.
And so, what we were looking for is a place that could attract active, younger people that are more focused on nature and the outdoors, a higher end demographic. We are definitely building a product that's on the luxury level. So we want it to be fantastic. We want it to be the best product in every market. And part of that started from, my background with luxury travel. So, if you're going to build a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton or a Swiss hotel or whatever, you're looking for a big market. You're looking for a big, gorgeous, amazing destination, either a city or a resorty type island or whatever that might be, because you're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars on building a big building and trying to get lots of people into that building.
100%.
So we looked at it and said, well, what if you deconstructed that giant place and you build it to scale for the market that you're in? So if the market won't support, 285 rooms, will it support 20 or 10? And, can you build something that's of a luxury quality and standard and all those guest touch points that are close to or exactly on point with a Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton type experience? My thinking is we can. And technology is helping us do that as well. And the pandemic honestly fast forwarded everything. So it was an enabler for us to really understand our market's better, go faster, and it's changed the consumer's mindset, and just in terms of what they expect, touchless entry into a unit, never physically meeting with someone. People want to stay longer. They want more space where they're staying. They want to be able to cook. So that's driven some design decisions and all those types of things. TR, first it was a little bit lucky. I love TR. I've always loved, that name, Traveler's Rest, being in the hospitality space, and it took me a long time to really fully understand why it was called Traveler's Rest, which I won't bore your guests with, but it's got a great history in the traveling public using Traveler's Rest. And so I just always had in my head that I wanted to do something like this in Traveler's Rest. And so we found the property. We first bought or put 1 acre under contract, and we started doing design work, and we had an issue trying to figure out how to connect to the sewer. And so the neighboring property wouldn't sell us an easement to get to the sewer, but they would sell us their property. So we bought 5.5 more acres. So we had a total of 6.5 acres there. That sort of forced us to step back and do a much more sophisticated look at what could we do with this entire site. So our site plan is pretty sophisticated. We have a lot of stuff to build out there, but it'll still stay very open, very green. And, the fact that we're bordering the Swamp Rabbit Trail and have about 1,200 feet of trail running beside us, overlooking our property, we think it's just like the ultimate marketing opportunity. Is, people are seeing it, thousands of people use that trail on the daily. And, they are stopping, asking, looking, walking onto the property. And so that's I think a big advantage for us in terms of driving awareness for all of the work that we'll do in TR.
100%. So I want to pull out a couple of things, which I think is really amazing. First off, I think it's great. What you're showcasing here is an investor with vision that says, hey, this market, how can I make this concept work in this market, in this place that I love? And I think there's a lot of investors around the country who perhaps it's in their own backyard and they love a place and they understand why other people love it too. They just are a little scared, to go forth with what you've done here and to build something out in that market that would work for that market. So I think that's an awesome idea. I also want to put a pin in the fact that you were careful about where you chose to build. putting it right along the Swamp Rabbit Trail. So for those of you who don't know, the Swamp Rabbit Trail here in Greenville, Travelers Rest, it's basically an old railroad line that used to connect these two towns. Greenville is larger than Travelers Rest, but it connects all the way from Greenville up through Travelers Rest. There's a ton of people who use it every day. It was strategic on your part to place this property right on the Swamp Rabbit Trail, and you really can. Like when we say it's like in the backyard of this boutique hotel that you've built, and you were strategic about where you placed it. You were smart about it, right? You didn't find any piece of property that you could start building. It was, let me find the right place in this market to allow this thing to be successful. So I want to put a pin in that too, and because I want to make sure that everybody understands, like all of the success here isn't by chance, right? It's all very strategic on your end. So I think that's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about, so your experience, you talked a little bit about what a luxury experience means to you. You kind of mentioned a few things earlier. Talk to me about the actual product itself, the station. When we're going through the design process for this place, how were you making the decision that you were making? You were talking about eating in a little bit, like an eat-in kitchen and a nice open space. Talk to me a little about because you call them wedge cottages,
yeah,
which is a really cool way to describe it, because it's basically 7 units.
It's 8
units that are basically side by side, and they're wedge units. Really, really cool design. I'm curious how you kind of came to that final product before we talk about the management side.
Yeah, so we had an idea of the size. So, we started with just looking at everything we could find, online and anywhere to sort of understand what's the ideal size that we wanted to create, and in order to just have the amenities inside of that. So, we knew we wanted to have a kitchen, not a huge kitchen, but a functional kitchen if somebody wanted to cook, every day, that there's enough space. We knew we wanted a full-size refrigerator. We knew we wanted a washer and dryer. We knew we wanted an oversized bathroom, really luxurious bathroom. We knew we wanted king-size beds in all the rooms. We knew we wanted to have a nice living room, and we chose to put a table, for example, that's made out of locally sourced wood.
Very cool.
When people remove trees from their yard, these typically these huge trees, that die or whatever. There's a guy with a company called Tree Hugger Customs here in Greenville, and he acquires all those big trunks of trees and turns them into furniture and all sorts of things. So he built all these cool slab tables. So they're oversized, they're big, they're cool looking, they're all locally sourced. There's a big chunk of Swamp Rabbit railroad track on the bottom of them that sort of holds them down, and
that's
just
cool.
Look
Wow.
Awesome.
That's cool.
And so we knew we wanted to fit all that in there. We knew we wanted to get nature into the space, so we wanted these big porches and really deluxe porch furniture, and so we had a great architect, we had a great designer right out of the gate, and both of those folks, Thomas Croft Jr. was our architect, and Amy Emery of Amy Emery Designs was our designer, and we also used a site planner guy by the name of Joel Kirby to help us look at the whole site and how do we orient buildings to make sure that you're getting light coming in the right way, that people can interact with the space. We can eventually, when we build our event space out there, that all of that kind of is glued together correctly and feels very special. And so it's, I can't tell you that was simple. I can't tell you we got everything right. But we really tried to look at all of the components and make a well-informed decision. We've learned a lot, and that will drive decisions on that property and other ones that we're working on as well.
That's cool. Can I ask you a few things that you've learned? Like,
yeah.
what was a few things in the process that you're on the next project you're like, hey, this is definitely something that we're going to be doing differently next time?
So from guest feedback, I think what we know we got right is they love walking into the space. You walk in on the high side, you mentioned the wedge shape. So the high end of the roof line is where you enter the space, through the porch into that, and that's an 18-foot ceiling. Everybody loves that.
18-foot ceiling.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you're just immediately struck, and that whole wall is mostly windows. So you get all this big burst of natural light. People love that. They love the locally sourced stuff that we've had tree hugger create for us. So we have this big table. We've got these big, rough, cool shelves that are all natural wood sourced from, I think, some old mill. We created our own beds and headboards out of big slabs of wood. So all of those things, I mean, you just immediately see it. The bathroom spaces are just, I don't think we missed, they're perfect in my mind in terms of spaces. The funny thing, I don't know, I think this was an accident, but the water pressure is amazing. So you take a shower there and it's like, I don't know how you get that. We didn't plan for that, but I mean, people were like, oh my God, this is incredible. But other things are, they're fairly easy to clean and flip. So, that's important. Obviously, running a business is you've got to be able to turn these over. We also invested heavily in all of our linens and all of that stuff. So we got great towels, great sheets, great everything. And, we bought a lot of them. So we bought 3 sets of everything so we can, always have something on the shelf resting, something at the laundry, and something on the bed, which, we were advised early on to invest heavily in linens. And so we're also not doing any of that laundry in our units. So we're outsourcing that. So we'll eventually build an on-site laundry facility, but we wanted to make sure that, the housekeepers could get in, flip that room, not have to wait on a cycle for, the laundry to be clean. And so, it's pretty efficient. We can flip every room in under an hour. And people also comment, and I think this is, from my own travel, I traveled, been to 70 countries and spent thousands of nights in hotel rooms, but the guest experience is so driven on how clean that room is. There can't be a hair in a sink. There can't be anything. And so we clean those rooms. We inspect them every single time before a guest arrives. There's a checklist of about 40 things that we look at because, from our standpoint, that attention to detail is what differentiates us in doing that. So, that's a long answer to your question, but we learned all of those, or we're learning, I should say, all of those components to try to, make sure the guest is just wowed when they walk through the door, but at the same time, make sure that you can create a consistent guest experience as you go forward.
Okay, so I think that's the perfect transition for Compo Hotels. Okay, so along you building this product, the 8-unit boutique hotel, that is operating as basically a short-term rental. You've got them on the OTAs and those kind of things. Yep. You got your own direct booking website as well. You also built out essentially a management company. Yep. For the 8-unit boutique hotel. So talk to me about why. I think this is going to connect with what you just said a lot, but talk to me about what your intention was behind Compo Hotels.
Yeah. So, we're pretty paranoid, I guess, about creating and controlling guest experience. And, and if you think about it, obviously you probably have, but the guest experience starts when the guest first interacts with the brand. So Absolutely. That might be a visit to your website, might be a visit to, a third party Airbnb or whatever, and they see an image or whatever of this product. And then that guest experience carries all the way into when they enter a code in the door, enter a room, until they leave, and any follow-up. So every touch point of that guest experience is an opportunity to sink or swim,
Yes.
And it's so important to get it right. So we were unwilling to trust that to just a third party. And there's great management companies out there and all of that. So it wasn't the fact there wasn't any good options. It was just that we wanted to make sure that we thought about and we had an opportunity to learn at every juncture as that guest moves through their journey and their brand interaction with us. So we chose to do it ourselves, and we're a tiny team. My daughter Ellison, who has a background in hospitality, she worked down on the coast managing real high-end vacation rental homes out of school. So she came to join me, and so she's our director of operations. So it's just she and I right now and our housekeeping team. But that's we work on it every day in terms of how do we get better? How do we get better distribution? How do we get better known. We're working all kinds of partnerships in the community, and just trying to learn how to be good hoteliers. And but managing and creating that brand ourselves is just, for us, it was just there wasn't another option.
That's interesting. It's interesting that you've basically built this off of your own experience, traveling to so many countries, being a part of so many cultures and seeing how they do things, right? And being in so many hotel room stays. There's so few short-term rental owners that we meet who everybody says put guest experience first, but to actually think about it constantly and design your short-term rental around that is a whole different thing entirely. And it's not an easy thing, right? Often we'll talk to people who are having some issues and we'll say, well, if this was you and you were in their shoes and you walked in and there was the hair in the sink or whatever, how would you react? And, I think something that you do so well that is still a learning progress or a learning process for so many others is kind of putting yourself in the guest's shoes and thinking about the experience from the time they book to the time that they leave their review. What does that look like? And is that throughput, is it high quality, in every part of the stay? So I just want to commend you for that. I mean, it's rare to find somebody who puts that much emphasis on it, and I think that's really cool.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's funny. I actually stayed out at the station this week. I had a college roommate who came through town with his wife, and so my wife and I stayed out there, and my friend stayed in one of the units, and we had dinner and TR and just a fun thing. But I hadn't stayed there since the first week that we opened. And so I went through the process just like, any other guest. And there was a couple of learnings. It's like, I was out there one night, but our property management system, the way it was set up, you get your welcome email and your text and all the instructions and all this great stuff. But we also were sending out the, I don't know what the technical term is, but basically the email you get when you're departing, here's what you do, take the trash out or whatever. And I got that about an hour after I checked in. And so I was asking my daughter, she's like, well, we always send it out and make sure they have it before they leave. And I said, well, I got there and got it basically when I got there.
Right.
And so she's like, oh, that's great. So, anyhow, we've changed that timing. So now it goes out, at the right time and all that the first thing in the morning. But it's just stuff like that. You have to always be, I call it sharpening the saw. You're always trying to get a little bit better.
100%.
We do some other things. We meet, we're typically meeting at this time on Monday mornings, but we meet every Monday morning and we have a list of key metrics. And so we're looking at, revenue per unit, we're looking at distribution, length of stay, how do we, drive down our time to flip a room. We had some early issues with, our costs were way high on our housekeeping. We'd outsourced everything to a service as opposed to having our own team. And so we've been going through building our own team, and that's going really well, knock wood, right now. But we meet and go through all of these metrics, and our goal is to just get 1% better every week, just 1% improvement on all these little things. And so we talk about specifically what could we do to improve these things. And there's been books written on that process, but you get 1% better every week at something. It doesn't take long before you're a lot better at it. And so it's, it's part of what we're, trying to do to keep getting better at our craft. And it's fun too.
Yeah. Can we talk about that for a second? So you are the consummate entrepreneur. When I think about an entrepreneur, you're now in my mind in our local market as somebody like Brice Bay. He's the guy to talk to when it comes to being an entrepreneur, starting some businesses, thinking about how to structure things, thinking about how to grow, right? Can you talk to me for a second about how you view getting it done versus getting it perfect? Have you ever struggled with that? Because I know that's something that I struggle with, right? I a lot of times I get held up on getting to the next point because I want it to be amazing and I want it to be perfect before I'll, click check. Is that something that you struggle with too, or?
I struggle with so many things. I struggle with completing. I'm an idea person. So I don't get as hung up on getting everything perfect as I get hung up on I want it perfect. I just generally want someone else to complete the task. Right. I mean, to be very honest with you, right. I'm just not I suffer from ADD and whatever else, and so my attention span is just short. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So, again, I try to surround myself with people that get things done.
Yes.
And, a lot of people, I could spend 2 days talking about this topic, but a lot of people get stuck because they won't delegate. And, delegation is one of the most empowering things to learn. And you see project managers get stuck where it's like, give me more projects. And you see them being overwhelmed. And, that art of delegating and just keeping an eye on the stuff you've delegated and to have a check back in, all that kind of stuff, that's where the magic happens. Because I'm sure there are people that are so good at multitasking, can have 50 things going at once. I'm not that person. I believe that you can take one task at a time and focus on it. And as quickly as possible, either complete or delegate and move on, as opposed to trying to fool yourself into thinking you can do 10 things at once. So that's my own personal philosophy. I'm not suggesting that's the best or the only way to do it, but that's the way I operate.
But that's awesome, man. Because self-awareness is the first step, right?
Yeah.
Like understanding who you are and understanding how you operate, and then building up a team around you that can navigate and mitigate those issues, right? Yep. I think that's awesome. That's so cool. So going back, I want to talk just for a second, because I'm going back and thinking about the investors who might be in a similar situation, wanting to build out something like what you built at the station. Let's talk a little bit about building this thing in the TR community and what that process was like, because I think that often will scare a lot of people, right? There wasn't really anything like this that I'm aware of in TR, in Travelers Rest. We keep saying TR, it stands for Travelers Rest. There really wasn't anything else like this in town, right? And can you kind of talk me through how you approached, getting getting the community's approval, and kind of on the back end of that? So how long ago did this start? Like, when was the?
Started 4 years ago.
Okay, so 4 years ago, and before we started, you said that you actually started by calling the mayor of the town, right?
Yep.
And having that conversation. So just kind of take us through that timeline. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so we started with putting the property under contract, and that drove the first conversation. We had some contingencies. We obviously wanted to be able to build what we wanted on the property. So once we had it under contract, we reached out to the mayor and the city manager and just directly had conversations, sat with them and said, here's what we want to build. Are you supportive? And thankfully they were very supportive. And then, we had to get this property's rezoned and annexed into the city of TR. So it was neither part of TR at the time, nor was it zoned for the use that we wanted. So that requires, meeting with the community, which we met with them multiple times, actually having it rezoned, and, which requires city council approval and all those things, and the annexation the same. So we did all of that work, and that was it. We have investors, so, we had to, in order to raise the money that we needed to build the project, we had to go through all those hoops. Same with all the other projects we're working on. They're all complicated in terms of getting, the appropriate zoning designation, and, if you're annexing, all those things take time. You're going to have, in any community, I don't care where it's at, it's going to be challenging. People don't like change, so, you've got, people that are going to come into a meeting and say, I hate this. And actually, I remember hearing somebody say, I hate that. I'm like, well, you hate it. Why do you hate it? And so, but you hear those things, and then when you build it, and the same people come back and they say, I love it. It's amazing. It's fantastic. Because, people don't, always believe what they hear. People don't always hear what you've said. People want to see proof of what you're doing, and I think we've done a really good job. We've tried to, at least in Travelers Rest, with doing exactly what we said, even exceeding in terms of the expectations we set, and communicating really well. And so as a result of that, we've had great support from the community, great support from the city of Travelers Rest, and honestly, it gets a little better every day. It's one of those things, honestly, we track in terms of our metrics is are we getting better at that every day? And but it is a process, and I wouldn't want to paint a picture for anybody out there, investors or otherwise, that there's some quick way around it. Takes a long time. Building stuff takes a long time as opposed to just buying something and renovating or redecorating or whatever, which is also a great model. It's just not what we chose to do.
Yeah, that's cool. Any advice for others out there? So you navigated the process of doing something in a community that it was not normal, right? Any advice that you would have for an investor who's interested in doing the same thing?
I'd say just leap. I've done a lot of entrepreneurial coaching over the years, and I think it's, if you've never done it and that's where you are in the process of, hey, I'd like to have a investment property, a vacation rental or whatever, the first step is doing it. Honestly, it's nothing comes without risk, but it starts with starting. And so from most entrepreneurs, that's the toughest thing. But kind of once you've started, you're in the game at that point. And, old phrase, you sink or swim. Most people choose to swim. And you start learning and figuring it out. I'd have a very defined idea of what outcome you want, though. I think a lot of people, and I don't know this is just my instinct maybe, is I think a lot of people decide they want to do this because they've heard someone makes a lot of money at it. And so they're like, oh, I'm doing this because there's a bunch of money at the end. And there might be if you're really good at it. But I think you need a defined idea of a guest experience you want to create, a type of guest that you want to go after. What is the market demand in a place? I don't think you have to be in a big town. I don't think you have to be in a place that's, super popular. People are traveling to all sorts of unique places. I'm constantly amazed at people just building a tree house on the back of a farm
right.
and putting it on Airbnb. And it's just like people go wild
right.
for just this unique experience in the middle of nowhere. And so all of those, and those things sometimes are really inexpensive to do. So I would be more inclined to think out of the box in that world than I would just trying to, buy a property in a hot market because lots of travelers are coming there. There's just so many ways to go about it. So that's my 2 cents.
That's awesome, man. Talk to me about the future of the station. So what's kind of on the horizon for you guys, and what are you thinking about and what are you excited about?
Yeah, so lots and lots of things. We to the station and Travelers Rest, we have almost completed the design for our next building, which will be a 3-story building. It'll have 2 restaurant concepts on the main level and 16 lodging units above that. We'll also be building a tentable wedding and event venue on our property. We plan to build, fixed bathrooms and catering kitchen and all associated with that. But it'll be a really, really unique space. And getting that restaurant concept out there is important to us. We're not going to run the restaurants. It'll kind of be a more similar concept to the Commons, if you've been to the Commons in beside Unity Park. So it'll be a food hall type concept, which is one of the visions that I have for these projects. Is how do you figure out how to get your local restaurateurs into the building, and giving them a place to sell their product. And so anyhow, that kind of puts a much louder heartbeat on the site once we get food and beverages served there, and I think it makes it more of a destination. So we're working on that. We've acquired more property. We have multiple properties under contract for new projects. We're working diligently on a project up in Brevard, North Carolina. So we have 16 acres that we purchased near the entrance to Pisgah National Forest. And we want to build a, sort of a base camp, if you will, for people that want to explore Pisgah and explore that area. There's just amazing things to do there. Incredible fly fishing, incredible mountain biking. And so we want to be, a luxury destination, and we'll be raising money for that project and all that. We've got a project we're looking at with a local winery that wants cottages on site. So they approached us about building cottages for them. So we're working on that and lots more. Honestly, we've got a whole development team as well as kind of sits alongside of Compo Hotels that is focused on kind of what's next.
That's very cool. Can you talk to me a little bit about the events model and building out these basically these complexes, which is what you're doing? You're building out an area where you can come and you can stay on site at the same place that you're having an event, or that you're going and having dinner, or that you're going and maybe doing a little bit of retail shopping. Can you talk to me about a little bit about what is the appeal for you in building out these kind of developments?
Yeah, so it's multifaceted. So I just from my own personal biases and experiences, I've just always loved finding the local this or the that. When I started my first larger company, 10best.com, back in the late 90s, we were all about trying to find the unique restaurants and things to do and all of that in cities all over the world. And so we physically traveled all over the world to see things and find out and write about them and publish that content online. And so that's definitely kind of part of my DNA. And so in creating the station and these other properties, we're trying to do the same. We're trying to tap into the same thing. And there's tons of data out there that supports this, but basically people don't want generic. People just don't. And, the pandemic accelerated that. People want smaller, intimate, unique, customized experiences. And I think there's just a giant opportunity to do that and do it at scale. So, we don't want to create a 1,000-room resort at all. That's just not that they're bad. That's just not what we're all about. We want to create, these boutique hotel experiences that are very localized, meaning we're trying to find the local restaurateurs that will come in and create a cool concept. The coffee shop that will, create an amazing, cup of coffee or tea or whatever somebody wants to start their day with. All the way through that cycle, we want a space that we can bring in local artisans. So part of that whole recipe is, all right, now we've got this space, you've got 2 or 3 restaurant concepts and whatnot, and you've got a space for people to do pop-ups. So if you want, artists, musicians, all the above in those spaces all day long, and that's rotating. So that creates an interesting guest experience because it's something new, it's interesting, it's an outlet for people that need exposure to sell whatever it is that they're selling. It's powerful for social media because it's more content, more things to think about, more reasons for people to pop in. So it's a big vision in terms of executing on all that, but that's where we're headed. Will we get there? How fast will we get there? I can't tell you that, but we're really trying to think about all of that, not just the room that somebody's going to sleep in, and can you make a margin on that, which is it's important, and that's a business and all of those things. But people just travel for different reasons now, and they stay longer, and they want unique, and they want cool, and so I think there's a huge opportunity, enormous opportunity to help facilitate that uniqueness of these locations.
100%. I mean, if you look at Airbnb, if you just spend some time browsing and you just choose a random market, not even a vacation destination location, but any random market, the listings that are crushing it are unique. They just are, right? They are spaces that you cannot find elsewhere in that market. Those are the places where their ADR is crazy high, right? And their occupancy rates are crazy high. Like their calendar is full. So, I mean, even if you don't know all the market statistics on this data that you're referring to, if you just go and you just scroll Airbnb, you'll see it real quick. And even Airbnb itself is shifting its entire strategy to gearing more towards those special experiences because they know it. They understand what the traveler is wanting and the kind of experience that they're wanting too. So I totally understand that. That's really cool. Talk to me just a little bit, and we didn't talk about this, so if you don't want to put this on the podcast, I understand. We'll go to the end. But I'm curious about marketing, because what you're talking about here is building out you're talking about building out a business structure that in a lot of ways will market itself. We were talking about social media, the ability to be able to bring in other businesses because the other businesses are marketing their own businesses. You're bringing in people because, and it's very synergistic in that way, which I think is brilliant, right? But just from a holistic perspective, I'm curious how, and maybe even just what your experience with the station has been so far. How are you guys marketing? Are you, because I know that you have a direct booking website. I know that you're probably using Airbnb, Vrbo, maybe booking.com. What's been your strategy so far from a marketing perspective? Because the reason I ask is because, again, we're talking about investors who are building out something in a market where there's not just a lot of people coming to that market and looking for a place to stay. You know, I'm wondering if you're having to do some work behind the scenes to drive traffic and to ensure that your place is getting as booked as it can.
Yeah, so that's a huge question. Yes is the short answer. We are doing lots of things to improve all of those things related to how people become aware of what we have to offer. And we're just getting started. So I wouldn't say, my background's marketing, but we do not have it nailed yet. We're learning. We've been very successful at staying busy on the weekends, but our weekdays are light, and we're trying to figure that out. As an example, in terms of, I'll start with sort of how we set ourselves up. So this goes back to Compo Hotels and some of our earlier learnings from my background in travel marketing. Those big hotel brands are generally very bad at marketing, and they're bad almost by design. And that's not to say that if you're entering one of the big luxury properties in some faraway city or island or whatever, that they're not good. Something happens when a flag, you put Marriott or Fairmont or whatever on your flag out front. You're relying on that big brand for a big component of your distribution. And they charge for that, obviously. And a component of what you're paying them for is marketing. What happens in practice, though, is the marketing machine gets starved at the corporate level. It's never funded properly. And so you see these budgets, from our standpoint, we're a vendor to many of those companies. The budgets are just all over the place, but they're always way smaller than they should be for appropriate marketing. So what happens then is at the property level, they're hiring directly to do marketing, and you get this disjointed marketing machine. So when we designed our model, we said, okay, you're going to have a hotel management company. In this case, it's Compo Hotels, and Compo is going to be charged with marketing. So Compo is also the merchant of record. So the money comes into Compo and then is distributed to the real estate owner, which is two separate entities. And that split, we set up to make sure there's enough money that stays in the marketing bucket to do proper marketing, as well as maintenance and repair and all that kind of stuff at the level. So the real estate investor in this case has a very defined understanding of what comes to them and what stays outside and what its purpose is, and full transparency on all of that. But the biggest component of that budget, outside of people, is marketing, because marketing is so important. And you talk about what are we doing? Well, the first thing that triggers someone to want to stay at a property is the image they see. You know, of course, it's what the image is all about, but high quality images, video, drone, all of that stuff is super important. And having a really active social media presence, and we don't have that nailed yet. We're just barely active on our social channels now, and it's just because we just don't have enough time in the day. We don't have enough resources, so we're working on all of those things. But there are so many things that need to be done, but it also starts with what you're marketing. If it's not unique and interesting, what do they say? You can only put so much lipstick on the pig.
100%.
I mean, absolutely.
It starts with a quality product.
Right. So, which is why we chose to build versus buy. And not that that's a great model. It's just the scale we wanted to operate in requires us to get to more lodging units. We need several hundred lodging units to really be operating at a high level on all the things that we want to do. And we don't want all those in one place, so that means multiple locations and the opportunity to cross market between those markets and all of that stuff, which is a whole nother discussion. But it's complicated, but it also requires a sustainable funding model. And if you don't have a sustainable funding model for marketing, marketing becomes the thing you do when you can. And if it's the thing that you do when you can, and you're a small business, and there's a million things to do, typically people aren't good at it. And it just needs to be done well all the time. But like I said, freely admitted, we're still not doing it at the level we need to be doing it.
Can you explain a sustainable funding model? What do you mean by that?
That means every dollar that comes in, a portion of it needs to go into the marketing bucket.
Got it. Okay. So you're saying basically allocating a part of your total revenue that you got and ensuring that nothing eats into that.
It has to be there, because if you look at it purely from an investor standpoint, if you're the investor on the other side of the table, you want to spend as little on marketing as possible and put as much money in your pocket as possible. It's just human nature, right?
100%.
It's what people do. And so you have to design it on the front end where everyone knows where the money flows. And if you're an investor and you get a great return, great. And I knew from day one that X% goes into the marketing budget, and the more effective that marketing is, it's going to grow my side of the pie.
Yeah.
If that is clear from out of the gate, as opposed to what often happens is, oh man, we need more money for marketing. And investors saying, I'm going to keep what I got, thank you very much. And you just go find your money elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so, again, for us, it was important to just design the model appropriately on the front end, which we're tweaking that honestly with our first little start. Our next one will be a little different, but that's just part of learning.
Well, I appreciate you being open and candid about that, because so first off, every small business, this is probably the biggest struggle for every small business, is understanding how important marketing is, right? I think that one of the reasons, and this was our approach too, the reason why we went to a vacation destination market is because we don't have to put a ton of energy or as much to get the return that we're wanting, the cash on cash return that we're wanting out of that investment. We're not having to do as much work. I mean, we can basically list it, and as long as we're doing everything right on the OTAs, the investment's going to come back to us, right? It's a different scenario though when you're talking about going to a market that doesn't have the 14 million people, who come to the Smokies a year. It's a different scenario, and you really are operating at that point a hospitality, and we are too. We say that all the time, like, even though we're in the short-term rental space, we're operating a hospitality small business, but you're talking about a different scale, right? Like you're talking about a different thing, which is amazing. And that's why I'm so excited about it and so interested in it. But it definitely does require, a different strategy. You really have to be comfortable with the marketing side in order to make it go. That's the only reason I was asking is, in your opinion, if an investor chose to go this route, how much of an emphasis do they need to put on marketing, and how much do they need to be thinking about marketing, and how much do they need to be, does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's difficult to quantify, because like you just very effectively explained, it depends on the market that you're operating
100%.
in. It depends on the product that you have in the market that you're operating in. So all of those things kind of impact what you need in terms of budgets and all that kind of stuff. And I think it varies. I think also marketing is something that if you do well early, it has big dividends later. And so, getting it right and building that awareness fast and early is super important to your future revenues. And so again, like I said, we're still learning lots about all of that. And it's incredibly important though.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. And that's what this podcast is. We're all learning and we're all growing together. So that's awesome. So Brice, this has been incredible. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being open with us and sharing what you're working on. And honestly, I feel like I've learned a few things in this conversation myself. And we always hope that our audience does too. Brice, if they have more information, or if they need more information, or they have a question or whatever, or they're wanting to find out more about the station or what you have going on, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, so certainly reach out through Compo Hotels website. That's COMPO hotels.com. And you can find contact form on there. Reach out to me. We get everything. It's very easy to find me or my daughter Ellison, who's our head of operations. And we're super responsive, super small team. Love to interact with anyone if they want to follow up with me.
100%. Well, I gotta tell you, man, I look up to you. I really, it's impressive what you're doing, and it's something that so few people have the courage to go do, and the courage to take action and figure it out as they go. Because that's really what every great entrepreneur does, right? Like very few of us have it all figured out in the very beginning. So dude, it's congratulations on all your success. It's really impressive.
Thanks.
And what you're doing for our area, for Greenville TR, it's really something else. And I can tell you as a resident who lives here, I appreciate it.
Thanks. Come check it out, everybody, and let us know what you think.
That's awesome. Well, guys, hopefully you were able to pull a few things away from this conversation to help you out in your journey of investing in short-term rentals. I got to tell you, man, be like Brice. Take action and figure it out as you go. Guys, hopefully you had an amazing time with us today. Thank you for your time and attention, and we hope you have a great week. Go out there and crush it. Take care.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Hopefully this was really helpful to you in your journey of building a business. If you like what you heard, please click subscribe and go to iTunes and give us a rating. That helps us out tremendously when we're producing, hopefully, content of huge value to you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and I hope that you have an amazing week. Go out there and crush it. I'll see you soon.